week I stand before you only by the grace of Almighty God. That's true. Maybe JD or somebody else would be here, but I shouldn't be here right now. But what they do is misinformation and disinformation, and they keep saying, he's a threat to democracy. I'm saying, what the hell did I do for democracy? Last week, I took a bullet for democracy.
Former President Trump responding to Democrats' claims that a second Trump term would devastate democracy while holding his first rally exactly 1 week since surviving an assassination attempt. Today, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle will testify before the House Oversight Committee. It comes as the first congressional Democrat. Pennsylvania Congressman Brendan Boyle is calling for Cheatle to resign. The agency admitting to the Washington Post that it rejected Trump's request for additional security in the 2 years before last weekend's shooting. Senior officials denied a request for more agents and extra snipers, claiming they lacked the resources. Joining me now is Virginia Congressman Rob Wittman. He is the vice chairman of the House Armed Services Committee and a member of the House Natural Resources and China Select Committee. And Congressman, it is going to be quite a day on Capitol Hill today with Kimberly Cheatle. Do you think that she should resign?
Well, Cheryl, I think she needs to be held accountable. What happened there in Butler, Pennsylvania was absolutely inexcusable. And I'm so happy that the Speaker is appointing a special task force to ascertain the facts and to hold people accountable. That's what has to be done by Congress. And people around the United States expect us to get that done.
Well, you know, obviously the concerns about, and we heard, you know, former President Trump, you know, he's talked about this. It's been reported repeatedly and extensively, first in the Washington Post, that they were asking for more resources and they didn't get it. So I guess we're expecting maybe 5 hours of her on the Hill today.
Yeah, I think there's some tough questions that she's going to have to answer. Obviously, at the top of the list is, why did they refuse additional security? What did they see differently than Trump's security team and what was necessary to protect the president? That's their ultimate responsibility, is to protect the president. And why they would refuse additional resources to do that is beyond me. I want to know why, and I want to know the other places where there were failures there. To me, the buck stops with Director Cheatle. And she needs to be held accountable, and she needs to explain why there was this massive failure, this inexcusable failure there in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the story that broke yesterday afternoon. Of course, that is President Biden dropping out of the 2024 race. House Speaker Mike Johnson is calling for him to resign his office immediately. The Speaker writing, quote, "If Joe Biden is not fit to run for president, he's not fit to serve as president." Today, one of your colleagues, South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, is going to introduce a resolution which calls on Kamala Harris to invoke the 25th Amendment and assume the duties of acting president. And I should add here the National Review editorial board calling on Biden to resign immediately. It's a scathing piece, and they say that this is just the next logical step.
Well, Cheryl, I think everybody's asking the question. If President Biden doesn't see that he can serve as president in 5 months from now, what makes it different today? And I think that's a fundamental question that has to be asked. I think what it shows is that what he sees is that he's been a weak leader and that his policies have failed. I think that those are questions that have to be answered today. And I think that there are very legitimate questions about whether President Biden should continue to serve. And I think his cabinet and Vice President Harris are going to have to address that question.
Yeah. Joe Pinions on set with me has got a question for you, sir.
Yeah, Congressman, obviously it seems apparent to anyone paying attention with any integrity that the president is unfit to serve. It appears he's been unfit to serve almost from the beginning of when he began serving. The question for me is, it seems that we need special inquiries into a great many things, not just the attempted assassination attempt against President Trump, but also into who helped conceal the state of mind for the leader of the free world, the commander-in-chief for these United States of America.
I think there are lots of questions about why all of a sudden are they now not supporting the president. Where were they a year ago? Where were they when these things began to appear? It's interesting to hear Democrats say, oh, we knew this all along. Here are the things that are examples. Well, why didn't they bring them up previous to this? To me, it's irresponsible to say all of a sudden at the last minute, when you look at this and you go, wow, this president's going to have a really tough time getting reelected, and they see the negative effects on their own campaigns, then all of a sudden they are willing to bring up these points. These points of his ability to serve, his weak leadership, I think go back months and months and months, for that matter, probably even longer than that. And why it wasn't brought up then is beyond me, and why, too, certain elements of the media also continue this story about, oh, no, this isn't an issue. His cognitive ability isn't an issue. It is an issue. This is one of the toughest jobs anywhere on the face of the earth, and you have to be capable of serving in that position. All these things, I think, early on led to question his ability to perform in this office.
Well, you know, Representative Lloyd Doggett from Texas did an interview last night on another network, and he was asked about, and you remember he was the first Democrat to come out and say that Joe Biden should step down. But he said what he wants to know, and this is a Democrat, he says, I'm really concerned about what we were not told during all of these months. He said this overprotective, stage-managed kind of operation not only appears to have denied the American people broadly of an understanding of the president's current situation, but also other elected officials.
Well, Cheryl, what I believe we saw was a manifestation of that weak leadership. We saw weakened U.S. national security. We saw the worst border crisis in our history, and we saw skyrocketing gas prices and grocery prices. I think all of those were a result of his weak leadership and his inability to really sense what was happening in the country around him. I think that was fully a function of his ability to perform and his ability to sense what was happening. I think that we, unfortunately, as a nation, find ourselves in the place we're in today because of his weak leadership and because of his failed policies. These failed policies, I think, were a result of his inability to really sense what was happening in this nation.
So you support Speaker Johnson's assertions that Joe Biden needs to step down now. I mean, John Bolton wrote about that in the Journal this morning, that on the world stage, to have a lame duck president who has also got obvious mental and physical problems is not good for the nation.
Well, so I think people around the nation see the problems that this nation faces with Joe Biden's current capabilities. I think that he ultimately has to ask himself, is this in the best interest of the nation? When he wrote his letter to resign as the nominee, I think some of the same reasons he pointed to as him resigning as the nominee should ask him to question himself as to whether he should continue as president.
There's a lot to be discussed, and that is why a lot's going to be happening in Washington today. Congress is back in session, and we will see you very soon. Congressman Rob Wittman, thank you very much for being here.